Now, last month, the Lake Chad Governors Forum aimed at stabilizing the region in the face of so many challenges took place in Cameroon. 8 governors from the areas affected by the Boko Haram insurgency, including Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon, all of them bordering the Lake Chad region, attended the forum in Yaoundé. They all huddled together, assessing the security and development situation in the basin, looking at how far the programs aimed at intervening and stabilizing the region have come, including programs by governments, aid agencies, and civil society, and the extent to which civilians and the military are cooperating there. They also analyzed the opportunities offered by cross-border cooperation and examined how best to rehabilitate and reintegrate people who had formerly been associated with Boko Haram. Sounds like a very tall order, doesn't it? Well, for more on the outcome of that Lake Chad Basin Governors Forum, I'm joined now in the studio by Dr Chika Charles Aniekwe, Head of Stabilization for the United Nations Development Programme's Lake Chad Basin Stabilization Strategy. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles, for having me.
It's a bit of a challenge getting to the length of your designation there, but we got there in the end, didn't we? I understand that the Governors Forum is a mechanism through which the governors in the countries in the region can approach issues like the Boko Haram insurgency collectively. Tell us more.
Yes, I think you've quite actually summarized it in your opening introduction. The Governors Forum is a way whereby we localize transnational governance framework, in the sense where we bring the governors of the 8 affected territories of the Lake Chad Basin Commission to really come together to look at issues that are of common interest to 8 of them, and also discuss how they can find common solutions to common problems. I think that is coming from what we all do know, that the issues around Boko Haram, when it started in 2002, many thought it's a national issue that concerns Nigeria alone, but today it's a regional issue, and that has to be tackled regionally. And that is at the heart of why the governors do come together to look at how to engage as a collective and find solutions as a collective.
But I mean, are they strong enough, united enough to be able to lead the policy and programs that are needed to address the crisis in the region?
Yes, on the question if they are strong enough or united enough, I think the answer is neither here nor there. In terms of very united enough, I think the answer is very, very so, that they're very united enough. And that's why they formed the Governors Forum to answer the question. Now, in terms of where they are strong enough, it depends on how we look at it. There are different political structures and authorities across the 4 countries. And in Nigeria, you have an executive governor that is constitutionally mandated to take leadership in their areas of responsibility in the states. In the Francophone region, it's different. But whether they have the power, yes, they do have the power, but also they have the political access to engage with the central authorities in all the countries to ensure that issues that are emerging from the forum are taken serious at the central level, including making sure that there are policies and programs that are targeted specifically around these issues. And if you bring it home to Nigeria, that's why we have the Northeast Development Commission, which is a commission that is focusing specifically on this issue that are emerging from the Lake Chad, but in terms of security, in terms of development, also in terms of how to ensure that strong collaboration with the communities that are affected.
Because I mean, I seem to remember in the past, I mean, this is the 3rd time the forum is meeting.
Yeah, it is.
I seem to remember that in the past it was more of a national thing where the presidents of these countries came together to meet and so on. Why has it been taken down to the level of the governors?
The meeting at the level of the head of state of the Lake Chad Basin still happens. The summit still happens. But this did not replace, and this is not going to replace the meeting of the presidents. This is another way of ensuring that issues that are discussed at the very highest level by the president are also brought down to the local level, but are really giving the governors the opportunity to actually lead at the very local level. One of the key challenge when you talk about development is how do we ensure that we get the voices from the ground. And we think, and from what we do know and from the engagement of the governors are closer to the people that are affected.
Well, they're supposed to be.
They are closer to
but
the
in
people.
governance in these places, nobody is really close to the people, are they? I mean,
No, the governors are closer to the people.
well, they're supposed to be closer to the people.
They make policies that concern the people at the local level.
That's why I say supposed to be.
Yeah, supposed to be. Yeah, but most of them are working for the people, and that's their responsibility. That's what they are mandated to do, and that's why we engage them and make sure we bring them together to address issues that concern the people on the ground.
What about things like cross-border cooperation, which potentially could lead to, expanded trade within the region, that sort of thing? Can they open up their areas to that sort of cooperation, or will it require the backing and approval of the central governments, which could make things a lot more bureaucratic in that respect?
I think one of the success story of the Governors Forum is actually a cross-border intervention. If you drive up to Maiduguri and head towards Banki in Nigeria, and if you're coming from the far north of Cameroon, you head towards Amshede, what stabilization intervention that UNDP initiated is to open up new channel of cross-border in between Banki and Amshede, and that has led to two key things really. One is to open up channel of human mobility that hitherto, when Boko Haram came in, ceased to exist, but also to open up channel of cross-border trade. And the day was open, there was a lot of lorries movement between in and out of Cameroon and Nigeria. And of course, we can look at quantifying what the impact would be on the people that live around those fringes. I think it's a critical component, and one of the key outcomes of the Governors Forum is really to look at cross-border intervention. But on your second part, yes, they do require the support of the central government, of course, to ensure that some of the initiatives that they are putting to the table in terms of programs and policies get the right backing and support from the central government. But the governors also do have responsibility at their level in the states.
And the United Nations Development Program that you work for has a stabilization strategy and a secretariat dedicated to all this, and you head that secretariat. Tell us about what it's doing there and some of the strategies that you're working on, including the technical support that I believe that you offer there.
The strategy actually is a strategy by the Lake Chad Basin Commission, not the United Nations Development Program. And the secretary is also a secretary of the Lake Chad Basin Commission, which I head, but I am seconded from UNDP to support that. So our focus is really to work with different partners and different institutions, different political stakeholders, to ensure that interventions are brought to the people that need it at the ground, including issues around DDR that you think you did mention at the early start of the interview. How do we ensure that we harmonize policies across the 4 countries in a way that the ex-Boko Haram associates will be able to reintegrate and reconcile the communities they have that are affected? That's one of our focus. But also our focus is also on the other point you mentioned around cross-border intervention. Our responsibility is to identify also those cross-border interventions, those areas that are within the fringes in the border that we could, with the help of institutions like UNDP, IOM, and others, initiate cross-border interventions that could open up channels for more livelihood opportunities for the communities, but also in issues around how do we get back to the root causes of the conflict really? What is the question around the lake? How does that help to bring back the agriculture that the region is known for? How does that help to bring back the community that depend on the lake for the sustenance of their livelihood? So these are some of the issues that we address at the regional level. Right,
and how is that process of addressing it going?
I think it's moving gradually and incrementally, and the strategy is now in the 3rd year, and it still has another 3 years to go. And the first phase really is the support that UNDP is providing in terms of by launching a facility through which the initiative I talked about in Banki and Amshede came about. And there are other areas in Borno State, for example, where we have implemented new housing, where some of the IDPs are returning to. There are new schools that's been established. There are new courts that's been established. There's also new police station that's been established. I think it's going very well, and the governors in the forum has committed to continue on the path of implementing stabilization.
But I mean, so far though, I mean, is it fair to say that the Lake Chad Basin has been a big basket case? I mean, pretty intractable. I mean, with Boko Haram and ISWAP still lurking in the shadows there, plus other problems such as, allegations of corruption, bad governance, etc. So a pretty complicated situation.
Yeah, I think you summarized it that it's fair to say that Lake Chad Basin is a complicated situation. It's a region that in the index is in terms of poverty rate is at the bottom, but also is also a region that offers an opportunity. And if you go back, historically, it's a region that has provided a lot of food opportunities and a lot of opportunity for food, fishing.
Yeah, but those opportunities are pretty theoretical at the moment. I mean, you could make the argument that it used to do that, but I mean, 3 million people displaced, a massive humanitarian crisis, lots of children out of school, and that in itself poses a huge threat, both actual and potential, doesn't it?
You do pose a threat, and that is why stabilization intervention becomes very, very critical. And that is why the Lake Chad Basin Commission and institutions like the UNDP and the donors are focusing specifically on how to address those challenges. It's a challenge that's been recognized, quite frankly, by all stakeholders, and that's why you see a lot of attention towards that. There's a lot of commitments also that's going towards addressing some of the challenges you've highlighted in terms of food insecurity, in terms of security challenges, also in terms of providing livelihood opportunities. Some of these challenges is because people don't have an alternative source of livelihood. When that exists, people will be able to find alternative sources of earning their living.
And of course, part of the aim, I presume, of having a governors forum for the Lake Chad region must be to have a strong network that can help build capacity for hearts and minds as a way of countering the influence of the insurgents in that region.
I'm about to say that I think you've been following closely in terms of what we're doing. I think one of our key action at the region is actually around civil-military cooperation. And like you said, counterinsurgency requires also to engage with the communities, to build relationship between the communities and the security forces to ensure that you win hearts and minds. And if you look at the tactics of ISWAP, they are doing just that.
Absolutely.
They are engaging with the communities, and if you want to counter that, you have to also engage with the communities to build trust, or else we might have a situation where there's an alternative government. And that is why it is critical to focus on building relationship with the communities, ensuring that there's information flow between the communities and the security actors, but also ensuring that the communities feel very safe around the security forces. So that is part of our work at regional level, to support the sectors to engage through community dialogue, to engage with the security forces.
Okay, well, the other problem in that region is the impact of climate change. We're going to talk about that when we come back, so please stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead, as we continue our chat about the multiple crises in the Lake Chad region and attempts to find solutions to the many problems there. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniekwe. Now, on the final official day of the COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow, we're looking at Lake Chad, a source of water to millions of people in West Africa, but which has shrunk by 9/10 due to climate change and population growth. But can a scheme dating back to the 1980s save it from the problem, and that is, it's properly and consistently funded if the plan works? The idea is to try to fill up Lake Chad and restore it to its former ocean-like glory by diverting water from the Congo River system more than 2 kilometers away. But successive governments have failed even to make the lights work, so little wonder there is skepticism as to whether the region's politicians have nodded off and have been dreaming a little too hard. But the Lake Chad Basin Governors Forum, which recently convened in Cameroon to discuss the region and the challenges facing it, are starting to think outside the box, and the idea of filling up Lake Chad is slowly gaining traction. And as we continue our chat about the outcome of that Lake Chad Basin Governors Forum, Dr. Chika Charles Aniekwe, Head of Stabilization for the UNDP program's Lake Chad Basin Stabilization Strategy, is still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. Is Lake Chad still shrinking, or has it stopped vanishing?
There are school of thoughts to that, Charles. There are people that argue that it continues to shrink. There are people that argue that it shrank and
it has stopped shrinking.
It has stopped shrinking. And I don't belong to any of the school of thoughts, because we're still looking at the viability of the various schools and what can be done. Our focus in the Lake Chad Basin Commission is what can be done to restore water in the lake and give the people opportunity to have access to means of their livelihood.
Right. Well, that's obviously the big question, how you improve the hydrosity, to use your language, of the lake. What are you doing in that direction?
One of the key outcomes of the Governors Forum, I think I'm quite sure that you saw the communique, that the governors unanimously said they want to pay attention to issues around recharging the lake. And what does that mean in practical terms, really? I think that, in your introduction, you talked about filling the lake and all that. But I think precisely what the Lake Chad Basin Commission is doing these days, I think the Lake Chad Basin Commission is looking at three key things. One really is to look at ways of desilting the lake. The lake is silted, which means that water evaporates quickly. And the second component is to look at how do we remove the invasive weeds that has blocked water channel through some of the tributaries, the Shari Lagoon, so that water can flow in. But before that, you have to do an environmental impact assessment to see how they're going to affect the communities around the lake. So the Commission do believe that when you deal with these two key things, the water that will flow from the Shari Lagoon should be enough to...
Yeah, but I'm wondering why these things take so long, and a lot of talk and talk and talk every year. Because, I mean, this plan of recharging the lake was first mooted in the 1980s, and there was talk about a lot of studies that are being done and all the rest of it. And now we're in 2000 and something, and you're still talking about looking at examining. I mean, that's why I'm saying that it's the consultants who make money. I mean, they come up with all these theories about how they're going to do this and do that and look at this and look at that. They get paid a lot of money, and the people themselves, their situation never changes, does it?
You mentioned 1980, and I'm smiling because I'm beginning to imagine how old I was then. But I think, like you said, I think what is needed is the political will really to drive this forward. And I think one of the key outcomes, you mentioned COP26, is that the ADB is pledging to support that initiative. And I'm quite sure there's a lot of partnership between the Lake Chad Basin Commission and the African Development Bank. And I think attention is being paid seriously on issues around improving the hydrosity of the lake. Of course, we need the political will, the political support to achieve that. But I think that the government of the region and the governors are paying serious attention to those issues, as you could see from the communique that they made from the Governors Forum. I think it's something that there's a lot of push. As you tell, the governor of Borno State was also at COP26, and that is also part of our advocacy to get support to the issues around the lake. And the president was also at COP26. So I think the lake is becoming a serious issue for the people in the basin, and attention is being paid to that.
Well, just for purposes of our audience who may not know some of these things, I mean, just encapsulate briefly for us what sort of impact climate change is having on the Lake Chad region, because as you said, some of the governors attended that some of the governors from the forum also went to Glasgow to that COP26 climate summit. I mean, what did they go there to say?
In terms of what do they go to say, I'll leave that to them. But I think the summary of that is really to advocate for support to improving the hydrosity of the lake.
Yeah, but how would you say that climate change has affected? Is it just the fact that the lake is shrinking, or are there other impacts there?
There's enormous impact, Charles, in all different ramifications in terms of access to water. That's the basic thing, but also access to means of agriculture. Most of the people that live in the lake depends on agriculture. For
many of them are fishermen.
Right. When you talk about agriculture, but in terms of fishermen, but it's also in terms of real farming. So, and the lake is not providing that. But also one thing that people are not paying attention to is the movement, some of the farmer header crisis issue. If you look closely historically, you will see that the lake used to provide source of vegetation for the cattle that comes through that towards the south. So that also has impact on that. So there's a lot of impact. As climate change is changing, this is impacting not just the people that live around the lake, but also people that benefit from the lake, such as the cattle rearers that are now moving towards down south. So the impact of the lake is felt both within the lake, but also broadly.
But I'm wondering, I mean, you've got, from the estimates I've read, up to 3 million displaced people in that region. I mean, those people are being, in some ways, taken care of. I mean, they're in displacement camps and all that sort of thing. I'm wondering, the amount of money that is spent looking after them, wouldn't it be better spent if they, all these projects and so on that potentially could give them a source of livelihood is then developed, and so that the people can depend on that rather than depending on handouts?
I think you actually quite summarized the stabilization initiative quite well by your summation. That is exactly what stabilization initiative is all about. It's sort of a bridge between humanitarian intervention and long-term recovery and development. And what UNDP has done through stabilization, and I've mentioned, is really around supporting communities to actually stand on their feet, if I put it that way, to be able to have a source of livelihood, to be able to return to their home and have a sense of security, but also to be able to continue to trade with people across the other areas.
Now, the UN Climate Summit, I mean, you're part of the UN, you work for the UNDP.
But I'm not a climate expert.
No, I know you're not a climate expert. What I'm saying is you're working in an area that's deeply affected by climate change. What would you want from COP26? I mean, they've just finished. Today they're rounding off the meeting. What would you like to see them do? Part of it is obviously financing. What would you advocate?
I think financing is a critical part of that, and financing has to just go beyond looking at the lake, but also looking at programs that support people that live in the lake. Like the Stabilization Initiative, supporting that has become critical, but also really in terms of the advocacy for a lot of attention, for global attention on what is really happening on the lake, and a lot of mobilization of resources financially in most cases to actually deal with.
Right. So if you get the money, you've got the plan to fix the place.
Yes, we do have the plan to fix it.
Dr. Chika Charles Aniekwe from the UNDP program on Lake Chad Basin Stabilization Strategy. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you,
that's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye and thank you for watching.